the 40-day habit test. In this video, I'm gonna give you one of the biggest secrets, biggest keys to making a positive transformation in your behavior. And it comes from the Quran, it comes from the Sunnah, it was taught by many of the prophets. And I actually learned it from a personal development author called Steve Pavlina, who wrote a book called Personal Development for Smart People. And he calls it the 30-day habit test, but the prophetic way is to make it a 40-day test. And it's very simple. You decide what habit you're going to go for. In your case, it might be praying on time every time, 5 prayers in a row. But if you're brand new, it might be, okay, I'm going to do the morning prayer and the evening prayer and start there and then build up over time. Whatever you decide is the best ritual for you to install over the next 6 weeks, write it down, be explicitly clear about what test you're doing on yourself, and put all of your attention, all of your energy, all of your love, all of your self-improvement energy into this one change over the next 40 days. The temptation is to try and do lots of changes in a short space of time, but as we mentioned in the last video, that's not the prophetic methodology and it doesn't work very well. It's much better to pick one habit and stick with it for a prolonged period of time, like 40 days in a row. Why 40 days? We learned this when Musa alayhi salam was invited to go to Mount Sinai, and he was invited to stay on the mountain for 30 days plus 10. So in total 40 days and 40 nights. Why? It's a spiritual training period. This is a good period of time for spiritual training. We also learn from the tradition of Isa alayhi salam, the prophet Jesus, peace and blessings upon him. We learn from him that he did the Lent. The Lent fasting period is 40 days. There is a spiritual significance to doing something for that period of time. And because our habit here that we're trying to gain is prayer, I highly recommend we stick with this prophetic methodology. So depending on where you are in your journey, I had to go at this a while ago for 40 days in a row for all prayers on time every time. And it was a beautiful experience. All of the other tips coincide, because if you're going to do the 40-day test and you're going to go for all 5 prayers or whatever is right for you, then I recommend during that 40-day period, only read books about prayer. Only watch videos about prayer. Don't keep all of your attention focused on this one goal. Don't get distracted with other goals. Don't say, okay, now I'm going to also try intermittent fasting and weight training, and I'm also going to try reading a book a day. Don't do all of that at once. Pick one habit, in this case prayer, go for it full on for 40 days. Now, why does this work so well? It works so well because at the beginning of the 40-day period, you don't really know what it's like to live as a person who prays 5 times a day. You might have fantasized about it in your mind. You might have idealized what it's like to pray 5 times a day. Or you might have said, oh, I could never do that, or it would be amazing to do that, but you don't have a real lived experience of it. But if you do it for 10 days in a row, or 20 days in a row, or 40 days in a row, now you know what it's like. Now you know it's not that big of a deal. Now you know that there are highs and there are lows or non-highs. There are prayers that are just average. There are prayers where it's like a tick box exercise, and there are prayers that feel like they changed your life. So you're going to experience all of that. But if the big mistake here is to say, I'm going to start praying and I'm never going to stop. I'm going to start praying 5 times a day and I'm never going to stop. That is really hard to wrap your mind around, and it makes it a lot easier to stop prematurely. It makes it a lot easier to stop after 3 days, because you're like, oh, well, you know, I'm going to be doing this forever, so this prayer is no big deal if I miss it. Whereas if you limit it and say, okay, I'm going to do this hardcore for 40 days full stop. I'm going to do this all out just for 40 days. I'm going to never miss Fajr for 40 days in a row. You're way more likely to stick to it. And I wouldn't just say it, I would write it down, make it a very clear intention. Let me give you a secret. The number one reason people mess up 40-day habit tests, and you should think of it as a habit test. You don't actually know how beneficial it is to pray 5 times a day on time until you do it, right? So think of it as a habit test. You're going to test yourself out for 40 days in a row where you pray on time every time, or whatever habit you agree with yourself, like maybe you're doing 2 or 3 prayers, depending on where you are in your journey. You can start with 1. After 40 days, make it 2, or even after 10 days or after 20 days, whatever feels right. But do a test for a set period of time and then increase it over time. The big secret here is don't convince yourself you're going to do it for 40 days and then do it forever. Let yourself make the decision what you're going to do after the 40 days at the end of the 40 days. Okay, the other big secret with making a 40-day habit test work is this. The main reason people flop is not willpower, it's not discipline, it's not laziness. Although, if I ask someone immediately after they flopped why, they'll usually give those reasons, but it's never really that reason. Because upon deeper questioning, and remember, I'm a life coach, I do this for a living, okay? I've seen it happen hundreds of times. Upon deeper questioning, it always turns out at the beginning of the habit test, they didn't think it through enough. At the beginning, when you're deciding what your habit test will be, is it praying 5 times a day? Or is it praying once a day? Is it praying 5 times a day on time every time? So if one is delayed, you failed? Or is it praying 5 times a day, but you'll allow delays? Is it praying 5 times a day in the mosque? Or is it okay if sometimes it's in the mosque, sometimes it's not? Is it praying, like, you've got to think through every different possibility of, literally you could ask yourself the question, if 10 days from now I've messed up, what was the most likely cause for me messing up? And address that now. And say, hey, if I'm out and about in public, right now, for example, right now I'm in December and the days are short. Okay, so Dhuhr and Asr are very close to each other. So if I'm out in public, it's better for me if I can to be at home during the afternoon time or to be in a mosque during the afternoon time. The idea here is, number one, think through exactly what the parameters of the test are, because if you're not clear, you'll go into a gray zone and then you'll say, oh, I've messed up, and then the whole thing will be over. Number two, decide what not only the parameters are, but decide what you're going to do if you do slip up. Does that mean the whole test is over? Does it mean you go back to day one? Or does it mean you're going to continue for the full 40 days and then come back and reassess how you're going to adjust the plan for the next time? Simple adjustments might be if you did 5 prayers a day was the intention, but then you hit 2 prayers a day, maybe for the next 40-day test, you go for 3 prayers a day. The other big thing to realize here is most people, if you're starting out from 0, it might take you about a year of focusing on this habit test before you absolutely are praying 5 times a day on time every time. Don't think that 40 days, if you're starting from fresh, you might be, you're who knows, you might be spiritually elevated. I'm not, right? I'm a very simple creature of physical habit. So for me, it took longer. Essentially what I'm saying here is be as reasonable with yourself as you can. If you've never prayed before, go for 1 prayer a day. Decide what the 40-day habit test is going to be, and at the end of that period, make a new adjustment for the next 40 days. And above all, don't aim to do several habit tests at once. It almost always falls flat it almost always fails. If you want more tips on how to get yourself to a position where you're praying 5 times a day on time every time, click the next video in the series. And if you want to deepen your connection with Allah, become your best self, and transform all your relationships, then check out the Switch Masterclass, mamoonyusaf.com/switch.